The Whitney I knew, despite her success and worldwide fame, still wondered, am I good enough? Am I pretty enough?
Have you ever loved someone so much that you just couldn't say it? Close your eyes and get ready to hear one of the most moving stories ever told. The movie star Kevin Costner once called Whitney Houston the love of my life. But it wasn't the kind of love you're thinking of. We'll show you their secret bond, which is full of faith, trust, and feelings they never said out loud, but still move millions of people. Let's get started. From Baptists to Hollywood. There is no way Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston could have been more different from each other if they had grown up in different places. But at their core, they were both shaped by something very similar. A strong but quiet faith and the beat of Sunday morning church music. They were just kids sitting in wooden chairs and listening to their moms sing about grace and glory before they were famous, before The Bodyguard, and before all the bright lights. They learned how to feel more deeply, trust more deeply, and maybe even love someone who knew that part of them without them having to say a word in church. This is where their story started. In the city of Paramount, California, Kevin Costner went to a simple Baptist church when he was a child. He thought of it as the center of his family's interests and a place where he belonged, even though it wasn't very fancy. His grandmother played the piano, and he could hear his mother and aunt sing while they were in the choir. The songs that filled the room made it feel peaceful, and he will never forget that. On top of that, he finished his first small job on the choir floor. The older people in the church let him hammer nails into the red line they had drawn for the choir stand when he was a little boy. That was something he worked hard on, and he was happy with the results. One thing that made him happy was knowing that he had made a safe place for his mother to stand while she sang her heart out. Even though some people might think Kevin was always the quiet church boy, that's not always the case. Seeing as how he didn't want to hear the sermon, he sneaked off to whisper with his friends. He also went into the kitchen after the communion service to drink the grape juice that had been left behind, but he thought it was whiskey, so he could play his pretend cowboy game. People in the church would all look on as his dad would grab him by the arm, hang him from his shoulder, and then take him outside. There's also a good chance that the priest prayed for him. But even though the dreams were bad, they made him feel good and gave him faith that stayed with him his whole life. There is a big difference between Houston and Newark, New Jersey, but Whitney Houston was living her own version of the same story. Her church had also been called her home, and Kevin had done the same. Sissy Houston was a powerful figure in the world of religious music, and she also sang in a chorus. She was already famous because her cousin Dionne Warwick was getting famous. Whitney would run quickly through the church halls, taking in everything that was going on, and learning how to run a room, even though she was pretty skinny. All of a sudden, her voice came to life. She knew how to use her smile to get away from danger, and she was very good at it. Not only did that church see her do bad things, but it also saw her most clearly keep her promise. She couldn't wait for God to show her the way in order to make decisions about her life. He already knew what she would do. With her plan, she would sing like her mother and cousin, and everyone would be happy with her show. This is what Kevin and Whitney had in common when they met for the first time. It wasn't just about Whitney's skills, charm, or looks, even though she had all three. This was done so that you could learn what it means to have faith as a child, and let that faith guide your life. In relation to the importance of keeping a part of the church you went to as a child, even though everyone wanted you to be famous, Kevin saw more than just a star in Whitney's eyes when he looked at her. The child in the second row, who was kicking their feet and only partly listening to the speaker as they talked about God's plan for the world, was someone he watched. One of the people he saw knew how hymnals smell, how a choir gets warm, and how the room quiets down when the Holy Spirit comes in. There was no need to speak such a shared language at any point. It was clear that they trusted each other on the set, when he held her hand, when she had questions, and when she smiled at him like she knew he got what she was saying. Everything that happened after that quiet bond, which was based on childhood faith and church memories, was built on that. It gave them something solid to hold on to when the cameras started rolling and the stress level rose. Plus, Kevin was sure of her and was willing to fight for her even when no one else did. What happened next wasn't just a choice of actors. It was a chance that would put everything Kevin thought he knew about Whitney to the test, and all the things Whitney thought about herself. A risky choice that changed everything. Kevin Costner read the script for The Bodyguard and knew right away what kind of story it would be. You could write a unique story about trust and giving up something important. It wasn't just a thriller or a love story. But not many people were sure who would play the popular singer Rachel Marron when it was time to pick. A few people believed it was too risky to hire a real singer. Some people thought it should be someone who has acted more. There were whispers that Hollywood wasn't ready for a black woman to play a major love role opposite one of its biggest white male stars. Kevin didn't care about that, though. He believed no one else could ever play the part. He always thought that Whitney Houston was the only one who could bring Rachel Marron back to life. There were no numbers or predictions that led him to believe that the movie would do well at the box office. That wasn't all that happened. He knew she had the voice, of course. Everyone knew that. He also knew that she had the right amount of personality, power, and openness for the story. She wasn't just the obvious choice for him, she was the best choice. This is why Kevin turned down other names that the company thought would be safer. They told him Whitney was on tour and that they might want to move on, but he made them do it even more. They were told to hold on. He told them to do it. For a year, they did that. Whitney didn't feel better while she was waiting, though. At that time, she was one of the biggest stars in the world. But she had never played the lead before. There were times when people liked her voice, but now she was going into a place where people didn't believe her. A lot of stress was there. There was more to the part than just a job for her. It was a test to see if she could get along with Hollywood's biggest stars. She really wanted to do well, but she couldn't get away from the idea that everyone was counting on her. Then, the day of her test came. Before the cameras even turned on, Kevin could see that she was stressed. Everyone close to her was waiting to see if she would be able to give birth. When the stress got too much, though, something inside her broke. She tried to smile and act the way everyone thought she should the whole time. But deep down, doubt was taking over. When the first take was over, Kevin checked on her in her room. When he opened the door, he saw her sitting on the floor by herself, with her face wiped and her eyes closed. Some spots on her face were made up because the lights were too bright. Once the artists were done, she took off their work and put on the heavier, more dramatic makeup that she always wears in her music videos. But it didn't work on camera. She felt exposed and bad about herself now. She didn't feel like she belonged there. Kevin told her to kneel down and look in the mirror. She really gasped when she saw how her face looked in the lights. She did something wrong, but he didn't tell her to stop. Instead, he tried to make her feel better. He said that she had no reason to keep anything from him. He told her she was already pretty beautiful. He also told her something else she remembered hearing at work. He told her that he would never leave her and would protect her from people who didn't believe in her or her skills while they were talking. A lot of important things were riding on that promise. It turned into the main way that they worked together. Kevin was with her the whole time they were shooting, and he helped her stay steady through every scene and tough moment. So made them feel close to each other and made her think she could trust him completely, even though they didn't say it out loud. Because of it, she became braver, stronger, and more willing to take risks. That vow brought them closer together because they were co-stars and knew what it was like to have doubts, but still move forward. Still, the weight of that worry didn't go away, even with his help. The truth is that it never did for Whitney. Even with Kevin's love and security, there was still a question that kept her up at night. even when she was performing beautifully or smiling beautifully. The burden of doubt. She thought she was always just one step away from falling. Even when she was at the top of the world, people would queue for miles to hear her, and her voice would fill the airwaves. But she still had the same quiet questions she'd had since she was a kid. There was always that weak voice inside her that asked if she was good enough, no matter how many awards she won or records she broke. Kevin Costner was sure of it because he had seen it for himself. She would pause before a scene as if she were bracing herself against something she could only hear. He could feel it in her stance as they worked through the long days on set. Whitney's fame wasn't just a stage for her. It was also like a magnifying glass, making every flaw, mistake, and feeling of fear bigger. She wanted to do well, but she also wanted to feel like she deserved the love her fans gave her. But that kind of need can be hard to carry. One question after another wore her down to the point where even her best times were tinged with worry. Kevin knew more than most about that responsibility. From the outside, it looked like he had a long list of wins, but he knew what it was like to stand on stage and wonder if tomorrow would be his last. He knew how hard it was to be watched by millions of people, waiting to see if you would do well or fail. Because they had been through the same thing, he felt a quiet sympathy for her. He didn't try to talk her out of her fears because he knew that talking couldn't take away worry. He stayed by her side, steady and calm, so she knew she didn't have to handle everything by herself. When they were on set, that presence turned into something more than just work. It got close to home. In his tribute, he said it best. "I was her fake bodyguard once, not so long ago." No one really understood how true that line was. Whitney found that Kevin was the only person who could protect her from her worries, even if it was only for a short time. People around her expected her to be perfect all the time, but he let her be herself, scared and uncertain, but strong enough to keep going. She was so open and honest that it made her stand out. People were touched by more than just her voice. Everything she did was based on how she felt, and even the biggest songs could sound like they were written just for you. Kevin saw that side of her and knew that what made her great wasn't how strong she was, but how soft she was. He didn't think her doubt made her less smart. It was a part of it. But the truth is that fame doesn't let questions go for very long. The world that praised her also said bad things about her. When she fell, the same press that praised her also tore her apart. There was a lot of pushing and pulling going on, and Kevin tried very hard to protect her, but couldn't. Still, his quiet help made a difference. She didn't have to be perfect for him to love her. Even though she didn't always believe it, she could feel that love when she was at her weakest. A love that was never a romance. People have been interested in Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston for a long time. Because of how he talked about her, fought for her, and his voice cracked when he called her the love of my life, she had to ask. Were they ever really together? Was there a secret love story? Or did it have something else to it? It's not as easy to explain the truth as a simple yes or no. People don't talk about Kevin and Whitney's love in the same way that you see on magazine covers or hear at parties. Stolen kisses and late-night apologies didn't make it happen. People like to use words like friend, lover, co-star, and guardian, but this one didn't fit. Something more complex and pure at the same time. Kevin felt drawn to her from the first time he met her. After many years, he said in an interview, "It's very easy to fall in love with Whitney. How could he not? Her beauty stopped you in your tracks, but it wasn't just the way she looked. She was nice. She paid attention to people, and she was strong even when she was scared. It was her modesty and her readiness to be open and honest, even when she didn't have to be. He was more interested in those things than in her words. That pull got stronger on set. Among the cameras and reviewers, they became each other's safe space and a quiet place to talk. When she wasn't sure what to do, she would look at him and get a steady nod, which meant she was good. If she felt exposed, he was there to protect her. When her worries got too heavy to carry alone, she could talk to him about them. She also gave him something even more rare. Someone who saw him not as a movie star, but as a man with problems and questions. Since they were close, it would have been simple for their friendship to turn into something romantic. Kevin never let it happen, though, because he cared too much about her, not because he didn't care about her, but because he knew how fragile her heart was and how much she was carrying. He didn't want to add to her load. For some reason, he loved her enough to keep that line, even though everyone else was guessing. But that love was still stronger than most relationships. In the quiet times between takes, he would go check on her. She put her fears in his hands, which made her trust him. It was the way he made her laugh when she wanted to cry. Labels didn't fit their relationship, but it didn't need them. Things are real, even if they don't fit into words. Wendy became one of the few people who really moved Kevin. He didn't say anything about how he felt for years, even after the cameras stopped rolling and life went on. He never told anyone how much she meant to him while she was still alive. He might not have put more pressure on her because he didn't want to hurt her. He might have done that because he thought it was holy and only between the two. It wasn't until her wake that he finally spoke it out loud. He called her his one true love while he was preaching. His voice was shaking. These words brought to mind all the years of quiet love he had shown, and the times he had never put into words before. You could hear the sadness of someone who had lost more than a friend or co-star. He had lost a part of himself. He didn't mean for his statement to shock anyone. It wasn't meant to make up stories or change the past. He thought it was true because he loved her. Not because she had to do anything, but because he loved her and would love her even after she was gone. Love like that doesn't come along very often. It stays, but it's not as bright as a romance. It stays with you in your heart, in the way a song sounds or the way you remember a smile. Kevin could feel it in every note of "I Will Always Love You." The song now felt like a message from her to the world, and from him to her. He made a promise to protect her memory with the same fierceness he did when he was protecting her on set during his eulogy. It was more than just words as he stood there that day saying goodbye. The funeral eulogy. There were a lot of people in the church, but it was very quiet. That day, everyone who came knew it wasn't just a funeral. They went to honor a woman who seemed unbeatable at one point, remember how smart she was, and say goodbye to a voice that everyone would remember. Kevin Costner was standing near the front of the room, waiting for his turn to talk. Some people told him to cut down on his speech to make time for the cameras. After all, the service was shown all over the world. But he said no. This had nothing to do with TV or plans. It was about her. He was going to say everything he needed to say. The church where Whitney Houston had grown up seemed to come to life again when he got up to preach. Kevin saw her sitting in the same rows of pews as a child, swinging her legs, talking to her friends, and getting into just the right amount of trouble to make everyone laugh. He had years' worth of stories, memories, and facts written down on pages of notes in his hands. He didn't want to say anything else. He started by thanking everyone who had been so nice to him and his wife that day. Then, he began to tell her story. That was the story of a girl from a Baptist church who loved to sing and was caught sneaking grape juice from the communion table. That was the story that everyone already knew. The story of the fame, the records, and the crimes. He described how she got into trouble as a child, and how she would smile when she thought she could talk her way out of trouble. Even back then, she was brave. Then, he talked about her worries. At the height of her fame, she still asked herself that, "Do she think she is pretty? Will they like me?" She had those questions her whole life, and they never really went away. He told everyone that those questions made her human, and in a way, they made her great. He talked about the day she came to try out for The Bodyguard. She was so scared. She took off her makeup and put it on again, but it streaked under the bright lights. How she looked at him, heartbroken, like she knew she had already failed. He told her at that very moment that she didn't have to change who she was. Those words weren't just to help her remember. They were for everyone who saw them, and for everyone who ever had doubts about her. That man stood there to protect her, unwilling to let the pain of her last years hide the beauty of all she had done. He spoke to the young women in the room and those watching around the world near the end of his speech. He told them to keep their skills and lives safe, and never let fear or doubt make them feel like they weren't good enough. He told them to follow their dreams no matter how ready they were or how good they thought they were, because someone or something was waiting to hear them. His voice was full of hope. Maybe one of them would hear him that day, remember Whitney's story, and use it as an example instead of a warning. He thought that making sure that her problems became someone else's strength was the best way to honor her. At the end, every person in the church had a tear in their eye. Not only did people cry for Whitney, but also for the little girl she used to be and the amazing woman she became, even though she was in pain. But there was something else as well. The room was filled with a calm, quiet sense of peace. That's because Kevin kept the promise he made to her that short time ago. He stood by her, just like he always said he would. He cared about her memory and told her story in an honest way. He didn't let the hard times hide how beautiful her spirit was or how great her ability was. The quiet love that endures. Her story still feels unfinished, even though she hasn't spoken in a long time. When I think of her name, I remember moments that are both amazing and sad, brilliant and broken. Kevin Costner is at the center of those memories. He still talks about her with the same quiet respect he had when he stood at her wake. For him, the years haven't changed what she meant. He still talks about her as if she were standing just out of sight, and his words and laughter could still be heard somewhere nearby. Kevin cares about her reputation. You can tell he wants to protect the parts of her that the world doesn't always understand by how carefully he chooses his words every time he talks about her. She wasn't just a star or a news story to him. Her trust in him was strong even when she was weak. She was the girl from church who thought God had a plan for her life, but didn't always think she could follow it. In a way, she was his one true love, his friend, and someone who was just like him. For her fans, The Bodyguard is more than just a movie. This is a picture of what they were to each other. Two real people who connected in a world where lying is common. Now, every scene they filmed feels like it has more meaning, and every look they share feels like a part of a quiet confession. People remember not only her singing, but also the bond that got her through one of the hardest times in her career, every time that song played. In Whitney's mind, though, that bond makes a life that was already very complicated even more so. Her story has always been sad and happy at the same time. She had a great rise and a painful fall. But when you see her through Kevin's eyes, you see someone whose flaws have never stopped her. You see someone who was stronger than her fears and whose light couldn't be turned down by what other people did or said. His words bring her back to who she really was. The girl with the beautiful voice who stood tall in public, even when she felt weak. Their story hits home because it's about something that everyone knows deep down. Anger that isn't fully expressed, love that doesn't ask for anything in return, and the quiet pain of what could have been. To keep people in mind, love doesn't always have to look a certain way. It's sometimes in the things that aren't said, in the way that someone sticks by you when no one else does, and in the way that they believe in you even when you do not. That may be why Kevin's words at her funeral are still fresh in people's minds. In one of the saddest parts of his speech, he talked about how he could picture her singing again in heaven, making even God wonder how he could have made something so perfect. Not only is that picture beautiful, but it also makes people feel like it's true. It helps those who loved her remember that she was more than the problems she had. She was wonderful. Kevin's quiet love for her keeps her memory safe even now. When rumors start to spread about her, or when reviewers try to bring out her flaws, his voice cuts through with steady honesty. People will never forget who she was because of him. His love for her, even though they never got together, has saved her story from being turned into just a tragedy. It's what he always saw in her, the story of a young woman who got past her fears and gave the world something amazing. Thank you for watching this heartfelt story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring moments. And click on the next video popping up on your screen. You won't want to miss what's coming next.